Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today on local development with open source based components. My name is Jerry, and I'm going to be the host for you today. I'm joined by Satya, our senior developer evangelist. If you've been attending our webinars and online sessions regularly, Satya is no newcomer to you. So thank you, Satya, and welcome to our webinar today.
Thank you, Jerry.
So we also have Aditya, who is our other senior developer evangelist, who's going to be helping us, who's going to be supporting us from the back end. He's going to be answering your questions, etc. So let's get started. Our forward-looking statement. Um, it's what we say for any presentation that we do, that some of the things that we talk about might not be available right now. So you should not make any kind of decisions, any buying decisions based on what you see today. Please refer our website to see what is generally available before making any decisions. And of course, we are on social. One exciting announcement that we have is that we recently created a channel exclusively for our Salesforce developers in India. It's called Salesforce Developers India, and it's on Telegram. The link to join the channel is over there. So if you don't have Telegram, please install it and try opening this link. Else, if you have Telegram, if you open this link, it should open in your Telegram app. We post updates about everything that we do in this channel. It's the one-stop place for you to be updated on everything that Salesforce Developer Relations is doing in India and APAC. We are also on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Our handle names are listed there. Please note that the webinar is also being recorded. This webinar recording will be posted on YouTube and also will be sent to you via email. Some housekeeping items: don't wait until the end to ask your questions. Feel free to put your questions in the question box that you see. Aditya will answer some of them in text. We'll also have a 5-minute Q&A at the end where we will answer your questions verbally. If we don't get to answer some of your questions, you can go and post those questions in your developer forum. Also, please note, if you have any problem with your video or audio, please try to rejoin the webinar. If it is a problem on our end, we will be aware of it. We have people monitoring it in real time, so we will be aware of it and we will take measures. But if we haven't communicated anything, it's usually something on your end, so please try rejoining the webinar. So let's get to the agenda for today, and I'll hand it over to Satya.
Thank you, Jerry. Today's agenda, in fact, is pretty much there in our title. So today we are going to talk about the local development. We are going to talk about the base components and how and why we open source base components and how it is going to help our developers to build the applications fastly. And then I'm going to show you how to set up your local development environment for Lightning Web Components, and then how you can build the Lightning Web Components. After that, today we are going to do a new thing, right, Jerry?
Yeah, we're trying something new, Satya. So why don't you tell people what's special about today?
Yeah, today's webinar is going to be a two-part webinar in 1 hour. So the first half an hour will be all about the presentation stuff, where I'll be talking about the base components, local development, and other things. After which we are going to switch over to the Trailhead Live. So we are going to provide the link to you while we are doing this webinar, and also in the one of the slides there. And you can use that link to directly join the Trailhead Live and then continue watching the live coding session on the Trailhead Live part.
Great. So Satya, you're going to talk about Lightning-based components here till 11 a.m. and at 11 a.m. we're going to switch over to Trailhead Live for the demo.
Correct.
Great.
So here you can see it is a sales application which is built on the Lightning experience, and we know that this Lightning experience provides easy navigation and easy to use interface for the end users. And this Lightning experience is made up of the Lightning pages, whether it's the account page, contact page, or any kind of custom object pages there. So the experience is built using those pages. And if you want to see how these pages are built, they are built using the Lightning experience components. So let's get into one of the page there. And if you see this page, it is built using various Lightning experience components like highlights panel, path, tabs, and all. So these components can be used right from your Lightning app builder, which may be provided by the Salesforce platform as standard components, or they may be the custom components, which you can build using your Lightning Web Components programming model or a programming model, or it can even be from the App Exchange, from where you can get the components, experience components, and then start using it. But yeah, how you can build your custom Lightning experience components? You can do it using the base components, which makes the things pretty much easy. So you can combine the base components and build one experience component, which can again be embedded into the pages there. If you see here, I have a base component called uh, filter, like which is a card component. Then this component can have other components like button. I have a button component, I have an input component, I have a slider component, I have more sliders. Now you can see this experience component is built using all the base components. So what is the benefit of using base components? When you use base components are built using the Lightning design system internally, so that it is that means it is LDS is directly available to you, and it's all built using the best coding practices, so it provides improved performance. And these components have very minimum footprint, so it's going to make your experience even faster. And each component can be controlled by a set of attributes, where you can create variations of the components by using the attributes that are provided by these base components. And once you build the experience components, you can use the experience components right from your app builder, drag and drop those components onto your pages and build your pages for the application. But again, base components, if you want to use the base components, how do you get to know which base component serves which purpose? You want to have a complete reference of it, you can do it using the component library. But before that, here you have a app builder, where you can see it is the new app builder, and in the last few releases, the app builder has changed it a little bit, where you can also see the mobile interface. Like on the top left corner, you can see a desktop drop down. If you click that, you can see the mobile interface. When you do that, your complete experience looks as if it is in the mobile application. And you can also control the visibility of each of these components. So this is what we are going to use for building our pages using the experience components. And again, as I said, for referring to the base components, you can use the component library, and in the component library, you can find various things like documentation, specification, and stuff. But let's put together. Now I talked about many things. I talked about base components. I talked about experience component. I talked about pages. I talked about how we create the Lightning experience. But at the application layer, you can see that application layer is built using your pages there. And these pages, in fact, contain the experience components. And these experience components contain the base components. But now let's get into the component library and see how we can get the information about the base components. So here we are in the component library, and the component library is improved over a period of time. In the last few releases, we saw many changes in the component library, whether it's all about referencing the components. Now you can see that component library is also updated with the latest LWC based components. You can see both the Aura components and the base components, and also the components that are there in your organization. So you can see the complete reference of the components, and you can also filter the components using that quick find box. For instance, if you filter a component, you are searching for button. When you search for the button, you can see the description of the button on the right side. And you can also see an example. And you can also see the preview of the component, how it looks when you render that component. And at the bottom, you can see a mini playground where you can play with the source code of this component, make the changes to the source code, and then you can just copy paste the source code in your project and start using it. And you also have the documentation and specification tabs there, where documentation tab provides all the information about the component, and in the specification tab, you can see what are the different attributes that are supported by the component, which you can change in order to bring the variations in your component. And you can also see the Aura version of the component by clicking the View as Aura button there, and then you can also link your component to the org, in which case you can also see the components that belong to your org, your own custom components. Not only that, the component library also has developer guide where you can find the information about your Lightning Web Components. And you also have the tools for checking your code, whether it is Locker enabled by using the Locker console. If you want to refer to the APIs of Locker, then that's also available there. And you have a playground where you can prototype your user interface and then use that prototype source code in your actual project. Yes, I was talking about the base components. Definitely, base components are very helpful for building the page experience components. But at the same time, base components are like black boxes, where you can use the element and then you can set the attributes and whatever functionality that is currently available in the base components, you can only use that component. But there are many asks from people, whether it's through Trailblazer community or other channels where we are social, about how about open sourcing the source code of the standard Lightning components. So we have been hearing that, and now you can see that our base components are open sourced. So now they being open sourced, you can view the code of those base components, understand the best practices and how to build the components, and also you can reuse the source code. So everything is open and transparent, and we have open source more than 50 base components for now in this release. And then using those components, you can extend your functionality. You can build the functionality over and above the existing functionality of your components. And you can not only on the Salesforce platform, you can also build your components on beyond Salesforce platform as well. We have an experiment Git repository where you can go and check out that Git repository for using these components even outside Salesforce platform. So along with the base components, we are also open sourced a set of recipes. So when we launched Lightning Web Components late in January 2019, we also launched a sample application for easily understanding those Lightning Web Components. We called it as Recipes app, which is part of our sample gallery. And many people liked that, and that helped many people understand those components, because most of the components are built using less than 30 lines of code. They could easily understand those components and use those components for their purposes. So on the same lines, we also open source, while open sourcing the base components, we also created an application called base components recipes. Now you can see these base component recipes is built using all your open source base components. Now we have 50 plus base components. We try to use only those base components and create the recipes for you, so that it will be easy for you to understand how these components can be used for your purposes. And all these examples are bite-sized, easy to learn examples, and you can see how they can be used for different kinds of scenarios, whether it's all about using the user interfaces, or if you want to see how the data can be exposed to the base components, or whatever. We have examples for each of these things. And then you can also explore the inner workings of the components, because the components are now open source. So you can look into the code and see how the code flows. So you can see the relationships between the components and how the component communication happens between the components and all. With that said, let's see a quick demo of the base components recipes. So as I said, we have a Git repository. You can check out from the Git repository, and then you can deploy it in your Scratch org and see how each component looks like. Yeah, we are going to see it in action even in our Trailhead live session, where we are going to do the live coding, where we'll check out that repository and see how we can use that repository for our purposes. So I've already checked out the code here and deployed the code in my Scratch org, and you can see we have different tabs: user interface elements, we have layout components, we have buttons, we have input output, record forms, and vertical navigation. If you see the user interface elements here, so we have a batch component. And badge recipe, basically it has 4 badges, 1, 2, 3, and 4 here, and we have 2 buttons. You can see with uh, this in this recipe, we are using this button to set the properties or behavior of that badge. For instance, I want to set this 4th badge to null, I can do that. And if I want to set it to some label called hello, I can do that. So all these things are examples, are working examples, which are bite-sized with a less number of lines of code. You can also see the different kinds of slides, like basic slides, and you can also see how you can vary the sizes of the slides with the attribute for the slider. Okay, you can also see how you can create a vertical slider, a horizontal slider, and we also have an example for carousel where you can set the images to roll. So you can set up to maximum 5 images which can roll, right? If you want to change the behavior, maybe you want to change it to 3 images limit, or you want to increase it to 7 images, you can do it now because you have the source code with you. And we have other examples like spinner, icon, title. These are the different user interface elements. And if you see the layout components, these are the container components with which you can create your top level components and then add some more components inside those components. So if you see here, we have an accordion basic, and I have a simple example here. So currently I've opened the accordion title B, and then title A and title C are closed. I have just put a button here. When I click say open section C, you can directly open that part of the accordion. Okay. Similarly, we have showcased the 3 types of cards that you can create: the narrow card or the basic card, whatever. And so this is one more example with the accordions where you can toggle section D. Currently, I'm not seeing section D. So based on some condition in your code, you want to toggle a particular section, you can even do that. And you have different types of layouts that you can create. So with this, you can in fact create a very powerful and effective web pages or the application user interface for your web applications. And we have accordion multiple, we have tab set. There's another variation of the tab here where we have like tab overflow. So these components cover all the things. And in fact, as I said, they are going to use the components from the open source. And we have buttons, so you can see all the possible buttons. We try to put as many examples possible so that you can see different types of buttons, whether it's they are the icon buttons, whether they are stateful buttons, or they are just normal buttons with different variations. We have examples for each of these things. And we also have examples on how to access the data from the Salesforce org using the record forms. So we have example of record edit form, we have example of record view form, we have example of record form. And you can also see the input output elements like checkbox, combo box, so on and so forth. So these are the pretty much this covers pretty much of the examples at a very high level. But yeah, once you check out the code and start using it, you are free to use all these recipes. Now what we have done is we have open sourced the base components. Before open sourcing the base components, we know that we cannot use the Lightning namespace. That's the reason we could not use, we could not see the source code of the standard base components with the Lightning namespace. So we have transpiled it into a custom namespace. We call it as C namespace. So all the equivalent base components which are open source are of C namespace. And then we have used those base components to build your recipes here. And so you can use those base components source code as well as the recipe source code for your purposes. With that said, we know how to check out the code, how to get the code of the base components, how to use the recipes. Now we'll see how we can build those components, how we can build the experience components using those base components. Basically, we have 2 programming models now, Aura programming model and our latest programming model, that is Lightning Web Components programming model, which is very efficient. And we are going to use this programming model for our base components today. Why? Because it's all built using the modern JavaScript and using the HTML5. and it's also interoperative with the Aura components. You need not really worry about the components that are already existing. If you're creating new components, you can use the LWC programming model for creating those components. And you can also, it also uses the web standards. So it uses the latest web standards, and it's built using the core web component standards there. And as I said earlier, it's lightweight and it delivers exceptional performance. And most importantly, if you see, all the base Lightning components are originally built using this programming model. That's why we could even open source the source code of the base components. So in order to develop those components, we also you can use any of the IDEs, but my preferred IDE is Visual Studio Code. Why? Because it provides the better developer productivity, whether it's in terms of the features that comes out of the box of Visual Studio Code, where you can say do multi-line edit or emits and all, or the features that are provided by the Salesforce Extension Pack, with which you can build any kind of components for your applications on Salesforce platform. This extension pack is made up of 7 different extensions. We have extension for CLI integration, where you can run your Salesforce DX commands using the CLI integration. And then we have support for Apex. We have Apex language server, which identifies the syntax of the Apex. You can see the syntax in different colors, and you can also format your code. You can prettify your code, and you can also see it executing in the anonymous way as well. We have Apex Interactive Debug extension, with which you can interactively debug your Apex code. And we also have a Apex Replay Debugger, with which you can debug your production log. You can get the production log and set the breakpoints, checkpoints in your relevant Apex source code. And when you run your Apex Replay Debugger, it stops at the appropriate breakpoint in the point of time in that log. So it's very easy for you to debug your production logs using the Apex Replay Debugger. And we have extensions for Lightning Web Components and also for the Aura components to develop components using either of these programming models. And we never forget Visual Studio, Visual Force. So we also have an extension for Visual Force in your Salesforce Extension Pack, with which you can also create your Visual Force pages. But what in general a LWC developers expect or a LWC developer want? So any LWC developer, because we have been working on Aura programming model also for a while now, so expects a way in which he can do the faster development, where probably incrementally he can build the components without pushing the code always to the say scratch org, and then to get this code again from the scratch org and see how the changes worked and all. He want a developer generally needs a faster development mode where he can incrementally build the components, and then it should also be easy to identify the errors. So there should be better developer productivity and error control features for in your developer environment. So for that reason, we have come up with the local development, which is currently available in the beta release in the Spring 20. And the benefits of local development is you can do the live rendering, you can build the components. While you're building the components, you can also see how your component is coming up. So you can see the component in the browser live without pushing the source code into the org. And local development server can be run using your CLI, or if you want, you can also run your local development server using your VS Code, where you can use the command palette from where you can start the local development server, stop the local development server. If it's already started, you can also open the local development server. So this local development server is provided as a CLI plugin. The only thing you need to do is you need to install a simple plugin for your local development server, and it will be up for you to use. So how to use the local development? As I said, you can run the CLI commands. On the right side, you can see I'm using CLI command to start the local development server. And once it's started, it shows the URL from where you can access the local development server. Or you can use the command palette, where you can see the commands like start the local development server, stop the local development server, and open the local development server. With that said, so what I talked about so far is how a Lightning experience is built using the Lightning pages and these how the pages are created using the experience component, and in terms how you can use the components to build these experience components. We talked about base components. We saw the recipes app for the base components, and then we saw how component library can be useful for you to refer to these components and use those components. And then we saw how local development is going to help the developers in building the components rapidly. That is rapid application development. With that said, I think it's Q&A time.
Yes, it's 10:55 at 11. We will switch over to Trailhead Live, where Satya will be live coding everything he just talked about, everything about local development with lightning based components. To give Satya some time to set up his Trailhead Live environment, we are going to do some Q&A right now, and Aditya is going to answer some of the questions that you are posting. So just give us a few seconds. Great. So we can start answering questions now. Please feel free to put in your questions in the question tab. Those of you who are don't have any questions, go join our Telegram channel. Aditya, do you want to start it off? We have a few minutes.
Yep. So I have answered most of the questions in the chat itself. So some of the questions I got was around base Lightning components. Are they available for Lightning Web Components and Aura? So yes, these base Lightning components that Satya was showing until now, they've been available for quite some time in both the versions, so in Aura and Lightning Web Components as well. What we have done is we have open sourced them, which means you can now look at the source code, modify it according to your needs, and create your own custom components. So another question was around, if I modify a base Lightning component, is it going to be impacted by locker and stuff? So the way you modify a base Lightning component is that you don't actually modify the existing base Lightning component. You take the source code of a base Lightning component, create your own custom component with it, and modify. So in case you have the base Lightning component called Lightning Badge, and if you want to add custom functionality to it, you would actually take the source code of Lightning Badge from the GitHub repo that I sent in chat. You would create your own custom component in the C namespace, which would then be called C Badge, and then you can make any changes to it. So that is how it works. And I have another question that says, can I test base components which are binded to the object model in local development? So yes, local development, you can definitely test base Lightning components which interact with Salesforce data as well as the object model. Then I see a very technical question that has been posted that actually it's a code error that has been posted. So I would recommend any issues with the code, you please take it to our forums or Stack Exchange, depending on the forum of your choice, please post it there. Without the entire context, we won't be able to solve problems. And I see no other, okay.
Cool. So then let's make our switch over to Trailer Live. So guys, I've shown the link to Trailer Live on the screen. Aditya is going to post the link to the Trailer Live in the chat as well. So guys, we are switching over to Trailhead Live. We won't be engaging more in GoToWebinar. Just follow this link or click the link in your chat to go to Trailhead Live. It's going to be a great experience for all of us. So see you guys there.